Fans were unaware of Property Brothers' disappearance from television for more than a year. 2019 saw an inside assault on his body. Test after test was performed by doctors in an attempt to rule out neurological disorders and lupus, but nothing made sense. His thoughts became hazy. Heat was too much for him. He was too tired to stand on set. Worst of all, nobody was aware of what was killing him. The damage was already done when they eventually figured out the solution. Today, we're revealing the agonizing reality he concealed from millions of fans, as well as the hidden illness that nearly put an end to his career. The birth tale of Drew Scott starts in a place where everyone believed the difficult part was over. The date was April 28, 1978, in Vancouver, and Jonathan had just been born to Joanne Scott. For the first time in hours, Joanne allowed herself to breathe as the doctor left, prepared to continue his day. Then a nurse muttered that she felt another heartbeat while leaning forward with an odd expression. Joanne's thoughts stopped. Drew recalled her yelling, "Oh, shh," in shock, but she subsequently quipped that her first words were something she could not repeat in polite company. Drew entered the world 4 minutes after Jonathan arrived. Since ultrasounds were uncommon in 1978, unless anything seemed amiss, there had been no indication of twins. Even skilled ears were unable to detect the boy's heartbeat because it was so precisely timed. The surprise was not merely enormous for the Scotts, it changed my life. 2 boys rather than 1. 2 futures are developing simultaneously. Their family life developed on a peaceful horse farm in Maple Ridge as the shock subsided. Originally from Scotland, Jim and Joanne constructed their house themselves. The guys grew to adore that beat, despite the harsh terrain and never-ending tasks. On some mornings, as they carried feed across the yard, the cold seeped through their jackets. On certain afternoons, they felt as though the world went on forever as they raced horses across wide open fields. Joanne encouraged them to maintain their discipline by enrolling them in karate classes. Their parents taught them to conserve money, mend broken objects, and persevere during difficult times while keeping them on a strict but loving course. Resilience was ingrained in them by ranch life before they even understood what it meant. They learned how to attempt, how to work, and how to get back up. Drew and Jonathan wanted to start their own business by the time they were 7 years old. Jam Enterprises, a little company named after John, Andrew, and Mom, was born out of that spark. With bashful smiles and a lot of optimism, they took the hangers from home to house, wrapped them in silky nylon, and decorated them with little roses. Their attempt was not as straightforward as their proposal. Doors occasionally slammed. Occasionally, customers purchased 5 at once. Then a wholesaler placed an enormous order that caused their eyes to enlarge. The lads made almost $15,000, which was an incredible amount. Joanne turned their little hobby into a practical business lesson in the 1980s by helping them with delivery and payments. They learned from that initial achievement that hard work could lead to financial success, and that teamwork was more important than skill. Soon afterward, their world took a strange and vibrant shift. They turned into little clowns when they were 8 years old. Jonathan developed dimples, and Drew developed curls. Those gigs paid up to $100 per hour, despite the fact that it seemed ridiculous. While children laughed around them, they performed at birthday parties and parades while coated in paint and juggling props. Drew enjoyed the rush of it, the sensation of capturing the interest of an audience. He also enjoyed using the money they earned to buy candy for pals. However, they were exhausted by the lengthy setups, costumes, and makeup. They eventually moved away. However, those experiences encouraged Drew to perform. They taught him how to read a crowd and hold people's attention, which would be far more beneficial to him than he had thought. Tough love and structure characterized their early years. Jim insisted that people get employment as soon as possible and supported employment at any age. Whether they were clowning, selling hangers, or maintaining the ranch made little difference. Character development was the aim. Responsibility took precedence over creativity. They gained strength from every task, every early morning, and every tiny business endeavor. The twins consistently cited their parents when asked how they balanced real estate, acting, and television. That's where it all began. Drew dreamed of basketball, but Jonathan was more interested in magic tricks and carpentry. He practiced for 4 to 5 hours every day by high school, pushing himself to get a vertical jump score of 43. Coaches hesitated at that particular number. He was selected for the University of Calgary squad, but an injury prevented him from participating in any official games. Then, in 2003, at the age of 25, he received a spot offer from another college. It was thrilling at first, but he soon saw that the recruits around him were younger and moving more quickly. Feeling the pain of a dream coming to an end, he turned away from the sport. Although it hurt, the moment forced him to go in a different direction. Although he did not see it clearly at the time, real estate waited on the other side of that decision. The twins purchased their first home when they were 18 and starting college. Drew and Jonathan discovered a $200,000 fixer with a vendor take-back mortgage that only needed a $250 down payment, whereas most students could hardly afford rent. After renovating it and renting out the rooms for $800 apiece, they lived rent-free for a year before selling the house for $50,000. It was an exciting and dangerous process. They entered a realm that would subsequently define them with that flip. Over the following 15 years, they continued to accumulate experience, one wall and one choice at a time, flipping dozens of homes. In order to make ends meet, Drew continued to work side jobs: busboy, mall security, personal trainer, flight attendant, website designer, and even bikini store manager. Every job taught him something about people and pressure, but nothing stayed for very long. Stability seemed far away despite all the effort. In particular, when realtors continued to cost them money by making bad deals, he required more control. Drew decided he had had enough in 2004 after losing thousands due to inadequate representation. In order to safeguard every dollar they made, he obtained his real estate license. Both brothers were licensed, so they took care of everything on their own. Their dominion was made possible by that decision. They established Scott Real Estate Incorporated later that year. The entire system was housed beneath one roof. Drew located and negotiated real estate. They were created, refurbished, and staged by Jonathan. They took on up to 10 renovations at once and opened offices in Vancouver, Calgary, and Las Vegas. Long before their names were ever uttered on television, they were millionaires. Drew persisted in pursuing his acting ambitions. There were a lot of little sparks, but no fires in his early acting career. He made appearances as uncredited extras or background characters in Smallville in 2001 and Breaker High in 1997. He had even been a clown as a child, but nothing had brought him the kind of attention he had dreamed for. A mountain of rejection. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, he made numerous attempts, but Hollywood refused to accept him. In an attempt to develop their own concepts, he and his brothers founded Dvidian Production Group in 2002, but money was limited and distributors continued to reject them. Only because real estate paid the bills did they manage to keep the business afloat. They moved to digital and television by 2010, but those initial years felt like a never-ending battle. Drew experienced fatigue by 2006. For a year, he relocated to Vancouver in order to pursue acting full-time. In his car, he taped auditions, slept at a friend's house, and pushed himself until he was exhausted. He was exhausted by rejection after rejection. He eventually came to the conclusion that acting was insufficient on its own. There had to be a natural blending of his skills and expertise. When the brothers presented their idea for a show, that combination emerged. HGTV initially praised Jonathan's construction abilities, but paid little attention to Drew. They even spoke about making Jonathan the focus of the entire program. Drew experienced the pain of being disregarded once more. He was afraid of missing his opportunity after years of wishing to be in front of the camera. He battled for his place and persuaded them that both brothers were necessary for the presentation. Everything that followed was influenced by that argument. The decision to sign the HGTV deal was a risk. Their firm was already profitable. TV had no safety net and was a gamble. They were paid little. It was a significant commitment. They would lose out on important time that they could have used to flip properties if the show didn't succeed. However, they had faith in the vision. Property Brothers made its debut in 2011. They finally realized what years of preparation had led them to when the concert took off. When Drew Scott took over as Property Brothers' face in 2011, everything practically changed in an instant. Although the show started out slowly, over 1.5 million viewers watched each week after those initial episodes aired. Families seen him persuading apprehensive homeowners to take a chance on seemingly hopeless homes. Although his smile gave the impression that everything was simple, the reality was more nuanced. He had already worked in real estate for 15 years, closing deal after transaction until it became second nature to him to negotiate. The cameras simply recorded what he had already experienced for years as a result. The cadence of the early episodes, which were shot in Vancouver, was intense. The brand expanded into spin-offs, merchandise, and national media within 2 years. There were awards. In homes outside of Canada, their names became well known, and Drew sensed the tsunami, pulling his life in unexpected directions. That achievement was based on something genuine. Drew and Jonathan ran Scott Real Estate Incorporated long before anyone was aware that the show existed. Long before any producer pointed a camera at them, they were flipping homes on a low budget and dealing with actual clientele since 2004. The brothers were actually executing the renovations you saw on television, which frequently fit into 3-week periods. They spent 4 months filming 5 homes for the first season. The days felt too short, even when they lasted 16 hours. Homeowners arrived with both worries and expectations. Budgets were broken. The crew rushed between repurposed sets and fast location swaps to maintain the timeline, and walls concealed things no one anticipated. Drew worked in the midst of it all, alternating between the positions of host, negotiator, and decision-maker so frequently that they were interchangeable. New concepts continued to emerge as the show expanded. Buying and selling began in 2013. Brother versus Brother and Forever Home followed shortly after. The franchise had over 14 seasons and other side series. By 2019, Drew sensed that a brand was growing beyond the original show. They started Scott Living in 2015 with the intention of growing steadily, but instead, the brand generated $100 million in revenue in just 2 years, with plans to quadruple by 2017. They published books. Licensing agreements were signed. They expanded their designs to include kitchenware, furniture, and entire home collections. Because the brand carried his name and his promise, Drew entered boardrooms and contributed to the formation of every contract. He moved behind the camera as well. He transitioned from creator to executive at Scott Brothers Entertainment, which became his second home. By 2024, the company had created over 20 branded movies, digital projects, and original shows for HGTV, Netflix, and Amazon. Drew sat with creative teams, examined finances, and formed alliances with businesses who desired access to Property Brothers magic. On certain days, he would film in one city, take a plane to a conference that same evening, and arrive at an editing room the next morning. He traveled almost 20,000 miles in some months, but he continued to appear on screen as if nothing was going on behind the scenes. However, the speed started to wear him down. He could not anticipate how years of travel, filming, and ongoing strain would catch up with him. By 2025, he was so exhausted that sleep could not restore him. His body aches. He felt lightheaded from the heat from the studio lights. On certain days, he was unable to stand for very long before his legs gave up. He was eventually diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and perhaps mercury poisoning by doctors. For months, the symptoms had been subtly developing while being concealed by scheduled appearances and smiles. Only brief statements and minor absences were noticed by fans. They missed the days when he was barely able to move, or the times when he wondered if he could continue. People were startled when he eventually talked about it. It became evident that there was a high cost associated with success. Something gentler had begun to mold his life even before the celebrity and business growth. Drew met Linda Fan at Toronto Fashion Week in 2010. She stood out with her fun costume as the fashion police, issuing fictitious tickets to anyone wearing an untrustworthy attire in the midst of the dazzling lights and music that filled the area. Drew chuckled. She chuckled. Before long, they went out to eat sushi, hot chocolate, and karaoke until dawn. There was no discussion of television or remodeling on that first date. Two individuals were singing, making jokes, and picking up each other's rhythm. Later on, Drew declared his belief in love at first sight. However, Linda's warmth and the stability of her grin remained with him. Slowly at first, then suddenly, their bond deepened. Their lives further blended when she was hired as creative director at Scott Brothers Entertainment. On May 12, 2018, a few years later, they were married in Italy. As more than 300 visitors arrived, the slopes of Giulia appeared to be soft in the sun. The journey to that day was anything but serene, yet the ceremony felt surreal. They just had 3 months to make all the arrangements. Vendors had to make choices. Families required direction. Drew and his Dancing with the Stars partner, Emma Slater, had to practice a complex first dance. Their mixed Vietnamese and Scottish ancestry was incorporated into the floral accents by the designer they worked with, Vincenzo. There was additional strain because the entire celebration was filmed for a TLC show. Despite everything, they continued to hold hands and reassure one another that the pandemonium was important. It really did appear to be a fairy tale when the day eventually came. They had let viewers into their house a year prior. A $2.3 million 1921 English-style property in Hancock Park was refurbished by Property Brothers at home. It was a 12-week race with constraints from the previous house, challenging basement construction, and a family reunion deadline that was drawing near. Drew overcame unforeseen obstacles and design choices. Linda added hints of Art Deco warmth and vintage Hollywood glitz. As they juggled meetings, filming schedules, and wedding preparations, the cameras continued to roll. Fans were able to observe their behind-the-scenes teamwork up close. Although it was untidy and exhausting, it also demonstrated how dependent they were on one another. Life continued to grow richer. Linda frequently mentioned that her biggest struggle was juggling work and home. She oversaw artistic endeavors while getting ready to become a mother. Drew supported her while battling health concerns. It seemed miraculous when their son, Parker James, was born in May 2022. They had been trying for 2 years, going through IUI and IVF procedures while carrying pain and hope. Everything seemed happier the day Parker showed up on their 4th wedding anniversary. Piper Ray, their daughter, joined the family in May 2024, 2 years later. Linda had a challenging second pregnancy. She relied largely on Drew as she managed fatigue and swelling. He slowed down filming, canceled vacation, and concentrated on taking care of her. With diapers, laughing, and long nights, their house simultaneously became louder and softer. Drew used to joke that one day Parker would take Jonathan's place in the family business. Even while everything around them continued to move quickly, these two small lives had a different pace. Then came the litigation that damaged their reputation. The 2019 episode Gambles and Jackpots featured newlyweds, Mindy and Paul King from Las Vegas. The show's crew spent close to $200,000 on a complete restoration. They said their house was full with issues after filming. They cited nearly 90 concerns, including appliances damaged by stray grout, doors that would not close neatly, and electrical wiring that scared them. In 2021, they brought legal action against Villa Construction. After examining the claims, the Nevada State Contractors Board verified 10 flaws and estimated that $94,672 would be needed for repairs. The Kings claimed that when filming was over, no one responded to them and that they felt ignored. The public connected the brothers to the issues, even though Drew and Jonathan were not mentioned in the lawsuit. Their names were repeated in headlines. Viewers questioned if the program lived up to expectations. The narrative went viral on the internet. Those who had never seen the episode started referring to it as a battle between a huge TV machine and regular homeowners. The Kings claimed to have felt duped and left behind. They displayed pictures of exposed cables, flaking paint, and twisted cabinetry. They said that after the cameras departed, they had to spend extra money making repairs. Others who had been on home renovation shows were motivated to voice their own grievances by their complaints. Story-filled forums. The way reality TV managed quality control was questioned in articles. The Kings came to represent something greater. Additionally, the harm to the brothers' reputation persisted. Their voices and faces were all over the show, despite the fact that they were not directly accountable. Before they noticed the production business, viewers saw the brand. Every story in the media featured their photos. The dependability of on-screen transformations was questioned by critics. Although Jonathan and Drew issued comments denying the allegations, the shadow persisted for some time. The entire circumstance served as a reminder that celebrity is reciprocated. It tests you just as swiftly as it lifts you. Even Drew Scott found it odd that his health began to deteriorate. Fans first became aware that he was not appearing on screens as frequently as he formerly did in 2019. At first, it appeared to be the typical flu, but the symptoms kept becoming worse. He was constantly exhausted, to the point that even easy activities seemed difficult. His thoughts were foggy and sluggish. He frequently experienced stomach pains, which were exacerbated by the heat. Days proceeded into weeks, then months, and his body continued to deviate from normal rather than improving. He visited several doctors in the hopes that someone would make the connection. Some searched for autoimmune conditions such as lupus. Some believed it to be an unusual neurological condition. He was afraid of the unknown because nothing fit together perfectly. After being perplexed for months, he finally discovered the truth. He suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome in addition to mercury poisoning. It clarified the weariness, the haze, and the odd waves of pain and weakness. The source of the mercury was an unidentified exposure. Perhaps something in his surroundings, or perhaps something he consumed. Regardless of the cause, the harm was genuine and more severe than he had anticipated. He had to slow down and then slow down some more as the symptoms mounted. He soon took a total break from filming Property Brothers and other movies. He took a break from professional trips and settings for over a year. While Drew concentrated on his recuperation and therapy, Jonathan continued working on multiple jobs by himself. It seemed unnerving to be suddenly quiet in a life that had been hectic and noisy, but he required it to recover. He posted on social media to keep people informed about his good and bad days, as well as how difficult it was to live with something that no one could see. He also talked about the emotional burden that comes with having a disease that changes every day. He moved differently when he eventually made a comeback in 2020. He was more selective about his projects. He remained nearer home. He learned from his recovery that his health cannot be neglected, not even for his favorite job. He continued to use YouTube and Instagram to explain what was going on during that extended period. He discussed how frustrating it is to keep hearing diagnoses that don't fully fit. He talked about how dread increases when your body changes in ways you can't control. Above all, he acknowledged the pain of the mental pressure, attempting to maintain optimism, stress management, and trust that things will get better in due time. He frequently relied on Jonathan and was appreciative that his brother recognized the value of quiet when speaking was too exhausting. His candor attracted legions of admirers. People told him their own stories and saw a different, more vulnerable side of him. For many, he became evidence that you can continue to move forward in the face of an invisible obstacle. Then, in November 2024, an unpleasant incident occurred. It was abruptly claimed in a string of YouTube videos that Drew Scott had perished in an automobile accident in Ontario. A fictitious accident at 3 in the morning on November 19th was detailed in a film titled Heartbreaking Tragedy of Drew Scott and his wife, Linda. It stated that he was trapped, unconscious, and did not survive after colliding with a truck. To make it appear authentic, the artists even included a closed coffin and sobbing women. They subtly stated at the bottom of the movie that the voices and images were artificial or altered. Nevertheless, the video generated genuine panic and received over 16,000 views. Jonathan even made a public statement, according to the channel that produced it, which is notorious for disseminating fabricated celebrity death rumors. It was all untrue. It was not verified by any authoritative source. A few days later, Drew swiftly cleared everything when he shared a picture of himself grinning at a Lakers game on Instagram. He was still alive and well. But before then, the false information spread quickly. Inquiring as to his whereabouts, fans flocked to message boards, YouTube comments, and Facebook. Because the thumbnails appeared realistic and passionate, some people took everything at its value. Meow and Sportska, two news websites, quickly clarified that the article was untrue. Neither Drew's family nor HGTV mentioned a catastrophe. When they discovered it was all manufactured, several fans exhibited genuine sadness. The anxiety subsided thanks to Drew's posts. The falsehood was dispelled by his mere online presence. Nevertheless, the fake had an impact. Many observed how simple it was now for internet artists to distort reality into something sensational in order to gain views. Some even acknowledged that they purposefully mixed fact and fantasy in their movies to increase click-through rates. Synthetic faces, manipulated audio, and believable-sounding but completely fictional stories were all employed. The Drew Scott hoax became a prime illustration of how these strategies may incite fear, capitalize on sorrow, and gradually erode public confidence in legitimate news. Drew's life began to settle into a more tranquil rhythm as all of this commotion subsided. He shifted to more modest and personal endeavors after the conclusion of the original Property Brothers format in 2019. In the same year, Property Brothers Forever Home was delivered. Season 1 featured just 8 residences, as opposed to speeding through hundreds every season. By moving more slowly, the brothers were able to engage with families and go deeper into each tale. After renovations, a 2015 purchase of a $500,000 Richmond property sold for $989,000 in 2018. The initiative had a sense of purpose. It led Drew into an environment where work had a heart and space. He assumed much greater responsibilities behind the scenes. In 2021, he handled around 75 new episodes across 6 projects as executive producer and co-founder of Scott Brothers Entertainment. Viewers in over 160 countries watch their episodes on HGTV and Discovery+. He contributed to the company's growth into lifestyle content, digital documentaries, and series. He wasn't on camera all the time. On many days, he led ideas and shaped projects in the background while working silently on development. Drew and Jonathan have a solid corporate presence in addition to television. 2015 saw the introduction of their home goods company, Scott Living. Their outdoor furniture on QVC generated over $100 million in sales by the end of 2016. They established Dream Homes, a high-end design firm for custom, expensive construction. Dream Home, their debut novel, debuted in April 2016 and peaked at number 9 on the New York Times list. It Takes Two, their memoir, was published in September 2017. They collaborated with big stores on unique product lines and with Target on school library renovations. Through these endeavors, Drew was able to take a break from continuous filming without sacrificing his chances of success. Drew continued to be involved in philanthropy as this developed. For many years, he and Jonathan provided support to Habitat for Humanity. They received the organization's top distinction, Habitat Humanitarians, in 2017. They funded initiatives centered on pediatric cancer research through Street Baldix Foundation and assisted in raising walls for new homes in Nashville in April 2018. They collaborated with Artists for Peace and Justice in Haiti to promote medical services and school construction. Thousands of individuals were impacted by their outreach, which demonstrated the positive effects of utilizing celebrity for good. By the end of 2025, Drew started to take an even more subdued route. He made fewer appearances, not because he was deteriorating, but rather because he wished to preserve his health and the life he was creating with his family. He and Linda welcomed their first child on May 4, 2022, and their second on June 2024 following a 2-year reproductive journey that included IUI and IVF. Being a father altered him. It made him move more slowly. It served as a reminder to him that work can wait and that children grow up rapidly. To avoid missing deadlines, he reduced the number of days he was available for filming and left additional days free. He expressed his desire to be totally present for the family he had long yearned for.